Can you remember where you were or what you were doing 10 years ago? Maybe you were still at school, in a relationship, maybe you were still living at home. Whatever you were doing, hopefully it was of your own free will. A decade ago, I was 36 with 8 children. Yes, 8. And I was living free for the first time in our lives. Free from the strict regime of work, from the commands of authorities. Free from the locked gates and barbed wire that fenced us in. It sounds like a concentration camp, right? It wasn't. That's life in Australia's biggest doomsday cult. Not only that, it was my second cult. When I tell my story, people say to me, "Surely you're not serious. Wasn't one cult enough?" Like them, you'll be wondering how on earth I was part of 2 cults. You don't just wake up one day and go, "Hey, let's join a cult. Wouldn't that be fun?" No, you don't. You're either born into a cult, forced into one, or manipulated into such a group. Growing up, my brothers and sisters and myself didn't realise that we were part of a cult. We just thought that we were a part of a super strict religious sect that wouldn't let us commune with the outside world. And by commune, I mean we couldn't have friends outside of our community, we couldn't receive letters, watch TV, or even read newspapers. And we were homeschooled, totally tucked away from society. As we neared teenagehood, Mum thought it would be a great idea for us to learn ballroom dancing, because how else are you meant to meet a suitable husband except through the waltz at 13? I clearly remember that first day. We arrived early, standing up politely with the best of awkward behaviour as each kid came in to be introduced. They looked at us like freaks. They'd come in wearing their school uniforms, shorts, jeans and t-shirts. Here I was, long sleeves, long skirt to the floor. Can you imagine how that was for us? I couldn't talk to these kids. What on earth was I going to talk to them about? They were laughing about school, TV, shows, fashion, and a side of Madonna's Like a Virgin that we'd not heard about in our good book. Shall we dance? So, why does one join a cult? One does not just join a cult. You never do. So if it's not a cult, what is it? Often they are personal development groups, community and support groups, sometimes even religious organisations. Friendly faces in a time of change. Are you aware that there are some 3,000 cults in Australia alone? 3,000? That makes up for some 600,000 members of communities. That's the size of Gold Coast and Tweed Heads together that are members of cults. We all have a time when we feel alone and directionless, and our perceptions are so out of sync that we are drawn towards people who have a seemingly inkling of structure. It's never a cult that you actually join, especially if it's seemingly open. An open cult isn't what you typically imagine. Sometimes they come across as personal development groups, somebody with an idealistic way of life. You're curious, so you go check it out. I have a friend, Jane, who was in such a group quite some years ago. Jane had her own flat in London, had a job, but she was at the beck and call of the organisation. They told her when and where she'd move to and what kind of job she'd have. They had to be in common jobs in order to be able to meet new potential members. If it's a closed cult like the Doomsday Cult, it's easier to see the signs. They usually have a property away from town, there's a large group of people living together, and often their beliefs incorporate end-of-world theories. Whether it's an open cult or a closed cult though, the signs you'll see in your friends and family members are the same. They eagerly talk about these new friends that they've got. They want to move to the community. They just can't wait to share the information that they've learned. So what can you do? Being in and coming out of a cult is exhausting. There is pressure, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, physically. There came a time when I'd had enough. I didn't know what to do. I had no support, no money, no direction. So I did the next best thing. I mentally checked out. It's similar to what the research says about women who mentally leave relationships 18 months before physically leaving their relationships. So I was physically there, mentally checked out, waiting for the right moment to check me and my 8 kids' bags out as well. When you can see your loved ones wavering, that's where you can help. Show you care. Wrap us in a hug. When I mentally checked out, I became a black sheep of the community. Not that I cared. But my kids and I snuck off the community one day to go to an outside church. There was an elderly lady there, Cynthia, who wrapped us in a hug. And to me, it made all the difference in the world. I felt finally somebody cares. That and asking, is there anything you can do to help? Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. But asking makes a difference. Stay in contact no matter what or no matter how hard it is. My lifelong friend Mary rang me on a regular basis. She invited me to her wedding. We talked about our kids. She asked me about my life, but without constantly nagging me about when I was going to move out. When I was ready, she was there. Be open and accepting. When I re-establishing my life, I had to completely start over, move to a new house in a new area, and set about making new friends. Making new friends made me pretty nervous though, because I didn't know how I'd be accepted after my cult experience. I was so limited. I was afraid of being seen as ignorant and naive or not understanding something. I had to play catch up big time. I couldn't even use the computer or the internet. But when I took my kids to their new school, the teachers didn't judge me or them. They were very understanding and brought the kids up to speed. And then for me, I didn't find it so difficult to make friends after all, because I'm open about my story and willing to connect. As my friend Adele says, people identify with my resilience and find it in themselves. The crux of the matter is that cults and secretive groups fill certain voids that we all feel at some point in our lives. We all feel vulnerable and directionless at some point, and cults prey on that. But we can make a difference, because if we all take the extra time to truly listen to our friends and loved ones, their thoughts, their ideas, sometimes their ramblings, they won't search out cultish groups to fill that void. We will do that. Thanks to people like Mary, Cynthia and Adele, my life is now totally different. Freedom of mind, body and soul. The voids that people feel, I fill them myself. And now married to my new man, and in case you were wondering, we didn't meet waltzing. Thank you.